What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be going over the Louisiana Residential Buy-Sell Agreement. Now, the purpose of this video is to help you get familiar and understand what this contract is actually saying. So, to prevent making this video extremely long, I'm going to go over this contract very quickly and just hit the high points to help you get an understanding of what this contract is saying. So if you hear me say this is pretty self-explanatory, read through the content of the contract, and if it still doesn't make sense to you, leave me a comment down below and I'll be sure to make sure I answer that comment. So without further ado, let's get into it. So here we have the Louisiana Residential Buy-Sell Agreement. All of this information is pretty self-explanatory. Whichever side you're representing, you're going to fill out that appropriate information. The broker name, license number, agent's phone number, brokerage phone number, email address, the name of the designated agent receiving this agreement. So here, you're going to put the name of the agent who you're sending the contract to. Here, agreement transmitted by. We're in 2024. Most of us are doing things electronically. So you're going to click the box that says electronic. You're going to type email here, or if you're hand delivering it or other, you're going to mark those boxes. Signature of designated agent receiving this agreement, their signature is going to go here. If you scroll down, electronic notice authorization, this is pretty much saying that the buyer and the seller are both agreeing to receive communications through email, but it doesn't give the buyer's agent permission to reach out to the seller's client, and it doesn't give the seller's client permission to reach out to the buyer's agent. Also, this is letting them know that the electronic signatures are to be treated as original signatures. So whenever I mention lines, I'm going to let you guys know where I am by the line number that I'm on so we can all stay on the same page. So line 1 through line 6, pretty self-explanatory. Municipal address is pretty much where you receive mail. So it's 123 Banana Street. You're going to put that address here. For the legal description, you're going to find this on the tax assessor's website. This is going to be something along the lines of lot 101, subdivision, so-and-so. This is the way that it's recorded down in the courthouse. Line 7, where it says grounds measuring approximately. Here, you can either circle where it says as per title, or you can type as per title in here. Lines 8 through lines 19. This is saying any movable items that you want to remain with the home that are of no value are going to remain. So you're going to put that here. So things like refrigerator, washer and dryer, if there's a microwave that's sitting on the countertop that you want to keep, that is where you're going to type all of that in here. Line 28 to 31. This is saying anything that you want to be excluded from the sale. So things like an above ground pool, an old shed in the back, anything that you want removed that is not part of the sale, you're going to type that here. Line 38 is talking about mineral rights. If you're representing the buyer and the buyer wants the mineral rights, in this space here, you're going to put 0, which is saying that the seller, if they own any of them, the seller is not going to retain any of the mineral rights for this property. Line 44 to 46, pretty self-explanatory. This is the sales price. Lines 47 to 50 is talking about the active sale. This is when you're going to close. You can get this information from the lender. This can be anywhere from 2 weeks all the way to 60 days, depending on the lender. So you're going to want to get that information from them. Line 52, occupancy. This is letting the buyer and the seller know exactly when the buyer takes possession of the home, which is at the active sale, unless stated otherwise in writing. Line 55, contingency of the buyer's other property. Pretty self-explanatory. If the buyer has a home that they need to sell before they purchase this property, you're going to check this box. If the buyer does not have a home they need to sell before they purchase this property, you're going to check this box. Line 61, talking about financing. If they're paying all cash, you're going to click here. If the home is being financed, you're going to click this box. This information from line 62 down to 74, this information you can get from the lender. And you're going to fill all of this information out. So whether they're using an FHA, conventional VA, rural development loan, whatever type of loan it is that they're using, you're going to fill this information out. Line 76 is talking about discount points. If you remember from your class, whenever they're talking about discount points, it's a certain amount of money that they're paying to buy down the interest rate. And again, if any of this is going on, talk with the lender, get that information from them. Line 78, where it's talking about other financing conditions. This is where most agents put the information about the closing costs. But again, once we get into filling it out, I'll explain to you guys what you can put there. Line 82 to 95 is talking about the pre-approval process. This is saying that the buyer's agent has X amount of time to get the pre-approval or the proof of funds over to the other agent. So this is why it's very important to make sure that your buyer is pre-approved before you submit the offer. Lines 97 through 111, this portion here is for the buyer. This is letting them know that, and I'll give you guys an example. any cost associated with purchasing the home for the buyer is to be prorated through that year. So if they close on a home in August for the buyer is only responsible for any of the costs associated with purchasing this home from August to the end of the year. Lines 103 to 107 is referring to the seller. So any cost associated with selling this home from August to the beginning of the year, the seller is responsible for. Line 109 through 111 is talking about what does a special assessment mean, and most of the time a special assessment is referring to a lien on the property. Line 113 is talking about the appraisal. If the sale is not conditioned on the appraisal, you're going to click this box. If it is conditioned on the appraisal, you're going to click this box. Line 117, this is saying that in the event that the appraisal comes in lower than the original offer price, the buyer's agent has this amount of time to request a reduction in the price. Line 119 is saying that once the reduction in price is received, the seller has X amount of time to agree to disagree to drop the price. Line 124 is the deposit. Deposits are not mandatory in Louisiana when purchasing a home, but if the buyer does want to submit a deposit, the buyer's agent has 72 hours to get that deposit over to a third party to hold it. So here, line 127, you're going to put either the dollar amount or the percentage of the sales price to be paid for the deposit. You're going to click which box here. It's pretty self-explanatory. And lines 133 is saying that the deposit should be held by the listing broker, selling broker, or other. Line 135 to 142 is talking about how the deposit should be held. Pretty self-explanatory. Read through that, but this is usually on the broker, so make sure that you get the deposit over to them within 72 hours. Line 144 to 149 is pretty self-explanatory. Failure to deliver the deposit shall be considered a default in this agreement. Read through that, get familiar with it. Line 151 through 169 is saying all of the ways that the buyer can get their deposit back. So read through those. They're pretty self-explanatory, and they have reference line numbers so you can follow and figure out exactly what they're referring to. Line 171 through 175 is talking about leases. It's pretty self-explanatory. If the buyer is buying a home where there are tenants present, that the seller has to get them over the appropriate leases, the security deposits, the keys, any type of access, and everything else within 5 days of closing. Line 177 to 181, pretty self-explanatory. Read through that, get familiar with it. Line 183 is the due diligence period. Now, I'm going to make a separate video explaining how this works because this is a very important part of the process. For the sake of this video, keeping it simple how to figure it out. Line 186 is how many days do you want for the inspection period? So you can put 7, 10, 12, 14, whatever it is that you want for the inspection period. And it's important to note that the inspection period starts 12:01 the next day. So if the offer gets accepted January 1, the inspection period starts January 2. So if you scroll down to line 193, this is saying that if the buyer fails to submit in writing that they're wanting something to be fixed, or they're wanting to walk away from the offer, if they fail to deliver either one of those, that the conditions of the property is deemed to be accepted. So it's very important that you make sure you respond one way or the other with the property inspection. Line 198 to 206 is saying all of the activities that can be done during a property inspection. If you want to get someone out there to check out the foundation, the roof, termite inspection, home inspection, the water tested, HVAC, hot water heater, whatever it is, this time period is for all of those things to be taken care of, and they are at the buyer's expense unless otherwise is put in writing. Line 208, buyer's options prior to the inspection. So option 1 at 212, the buyer elects that they don't want to move forward. The contract is null and void, no explanations needed. 219 is option 2. This is where the buyer makes their request for the items that they want to get taken care of. So if you read through 223 to 249, this is talking about the back and forth. And again, I'm going to go over this in great detail at a later date. But for right now, read through it, get familiar with it, because it is pretty self-explanatory. Line 251 and 254, this is saying that once the buyer and the seller comes to an agreement on the repairs that are needed, the seller is not obligated to make any repairs outside of what they want to fix for the inspection period. So it's important that whatever they want to get checked out, they get it looked at. Line 255, is there a private water system? Is there a private septic system? If there is, you're going to mark these two boxes. If there's no private water or septic, you're going to click these boxes. 269, where it's talking about the home warranty, pretty self-explanatory. Home warranty is not mandatory, and the home warranty does not need to be purchased prior to closing. But here, the buyer wants a home warranty. You're going to mark the box that says a home warranty plan will be purchased up to what amount, who's paying for it, and who's going to be ordering it. Line 281 to 296. I'm going to make a separate video about this as well, so be on the lookout for that. But I will tell you this: if you are the buyer or the seller, if you're a buyer, never click this box, and if you're the seller, never accept an offer that has this box checked, and I'll explain why in a later video. This box saying sell as is without warranty, so this is pretty much saying that the seller is letting the buyer know everything that they can possibly think of or know or aware of with this property, anything that's wrong with it to the best of their ability, and that this home is being sold without warranties, meaning if something happens with that home outside of what was told to them, that the buyer cannot come back and sue the sellers for any reason whatsoever. This box where it says new home warranties, there's a whole list of other warranties and paperwork that goes along with purchasing a new construction home. If it's a brand new home, you're going to want to click this box, and I'll explain the paperwork for that in a later video as well. Line 298 to 307, where it talks about merchantable title. If for whatever reason the title company runs into any issues with the title work, lines 301 is saying that the active sale is to be extended for X amount of days. So you're going to put the number of days you want the contract to be extended. Shall there be any issues that the title company runs into when they're doing the title work? 309, final walkthrough 5 days before closing. The buyer and their agent can walk through the home to make sure that all of the items that were requested to be repaired are fixed, there are no further damages, and that the home is clean and the same or better condition than it was whenever you guys put in the offer. Line 314 to 320 is default of agreement by the seller. This is saying that if the buyer does everything that the seller requested and the seller decides for whatever reason they no longer want to sell the house, this is saying that the buyer can sue for specific performance up to 10% of the sales price for stipulated damages. Also, the seller still may be responsible for the broker's commission. And same here at 325, if the buyer decides for whatever reason that they don't want to buy the property and the seller has done everything that the buyer has requested, that the seller can sue for specific performance up to 10% for stipulated damages, and the buyer may be held liable for the broker's commission. Line 335, 341 and 348, these are some websites that you can give to your clients to let them know whether if they have mold related hazard issues, if they're wanting to look at the offender notification, and if they're in the flood zone, they can check out the flood maps here. Line 351, where it says choice of law, pretty self-explanatory. 354, deadlines, pretty self-explanatory. All of the deadlines are at 11:59 in Louisiana. Additional terms and conditions. Here you can put anything additional that you want to add in this contract. So who you want to close with, have the yard maintained, have the home cleaned. If you're a buyer and you're wanting the seller to pay for your agent's commission, you can put here the seller to pay buyer's commission up to 3% or whatever percentage you guys come to an agreement on, a flat rate, whatever the case may be. You're going to put that here. Line 370, where it says roles of the broker and designated agent. Line 370 all the way through 388. This is pretty much saying that the broker and the designated agent's job is to bring the buyer and the seller together for the sake of this contract. Anyone that the agent recommends as a third party to help with this transaction, the agent is not to be held liable for any issues whatsoever if the buyer gets someone out to look at the square footage and the square footage is wrong and the agent recommended this person, the agent is not to be held liable. If there's anything missed on any of the inspections, whatever the case may be, the agent is not to be held liable for anything outside of that. The agent's job is to help get through this transaction, and they're not to be held liable for any third party outside of the transaction. 390 to 394 is talking about any other addendums that will be attached to this contract. Line 400, where it says singular and plural. Anytime you see buyer or seller, it can be used singular or plural. So if there are two buyers and the contract says buyer, is referring to both buyers and or sellers. Line 403, pretty self-explanatory. Line 409, pretty self-explanatory. Read through those and get familiar with it. Line 416, contract, also pretty self-explanatory. If the buyer or the seller has any issues with understanding the contract, that they are to seek legal advice before signing anything. Line 420 is talking about the entire agreement. Again, pretty self-explanatory. Read through that. 422 is the expiration of the offer. Line 423, how much time does the buyer or the seller have before the contract is no longer any good? Here, you can put 12 hours, you can put 24 hours. I personally don't recommend giving too much time because anything can happen during that time period. So I would recommend giving them no more than 24 hours. Could be shorter or longer, depending on what works for both parties. Scroll down here, 427 through 441. This is where you're going to put your client's information. So if you're representing the buyer and you're submitting an offer, you're going to click the box that says buyer. You're going to put their name. They're going to sign here. You're going to put the date and time. And here where it says this offer was presented to the blank, if you're the buyer submitting an offer to the seller, or if you're a seller submitting an offer to a buyer, you're going to put the other agent's information here, date and time. You're going to send it, and they're going to be responsible for this portion here. So they can either accept it, they can reject it, or they can counter it. If they counter it, they're going to send you a counter offer along with it with their client's information filled out here. And down here, this is where it says this offer was presented is going to come back to you. You're going to have your name, signature, date, and time. That's all I have today, guys. Like I said, I wanted to make this video as short and as brief as possible so I didn't lose you with a lot of information. If there's anything or any part of this contract that didn't make sense to you, I didn't explain it well enough, or you just need a little more info on it, leave me a comment down below. I'll be sure to get to you as soon as possible. If you have any suggestions on future videos or content that you would like to see or anything explained, also leave that down in the comment as well, and I'll try to get to that in the future. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like and subscribe button. Don't forget to be elite. And as always, thanks for watching.